How do I make use of my open file, improve my position, make use of the enemy weak squares, and win the game? If you're asking yourself the same questions in your games, then I welcome you to the second video about weak and strong squares. And if you haven't checked it out yet, yeah, there's a first video about the same topic. Very nice game to learn from. And yeah, let's jump right into it. So in this position, as I mentioned, we have the open file for white, the C file. Our rook is already on C3. So we want to make progress on the queen side and somehow exploit the open file. And black wants to advance on the queen side as well. The rooks are on C8 and A8, and most likely wants to push the B pawn to attack our position. And that's exactly what happened in the game. B5 was played. And you might wonder, and pause a second if you have to, isn't this just a free pawn? Can't we simply take? But yeah, black can simply play rook to B8. There's not really any move for the queen. We have to retreat. Black can take on B2, and suddenly we have a black rook infiltrating our position, and that's not really what we want. So that's really not a good move. So after B5, the theme of our open file, how can we put more pressure? Quite simple move. It's queen to C2. Simply doubling up on the C file. And one more thing, we make space for our knight, which can jump to D3, and from there has nice options. We're looking at E5, C5, or B4, and we eventually want to hop into one of those squares as well in the future. So the next move from black is rook to B8. And as I mentioned earlier, black wants to advance on the queen side, so that's a logical move. But the first question for you guys, why is black not playing C5 straight away? So instead of rook to B8, why couldn't he play C5 to attack our position straight away? Take a second to think, pause the video. The answer is pretty simple. We simply take. We simply take, and if we look at the pawns now, we technically have a passed pawn. Our D4 square is brilliant for our knights, and both of those black pawns will be very weak very soon, and the endgame is simply very hard for black. So that's why C5 was not considered in the game, and instead rook to B8 was played. So next move by white is logical, following up on the queen C2 move, and that's knight to E1. Like I mentioned earlier, jumping to D3, pretty straightforward. And black wants to do the same thing, relocate the knight to B6 to eventually jump to, for example, C4, creating an outpost for himself and trying to improve his position on the queen side. And the second question for you guys, again, isn't it better to straight away push, play B4 and attack white? Let's have a look. Instead of knight to C8, B4. Now we have to look at a possible continuation. For example, we take. Now the queen can take. Now we follow up on our plan. Knight D3 attacks the queen and improves the knight. Queen to B5. Now, for example, rook to A1 to occupy the second open file. And now knight to C8. So, what do you think about this position, guys? Take a look. And yeah, white is still better. It might look like black can put pressure on the B2 pawn and has like a very strong A4 pawn, but black really can't make any progress. And on the other hand, white will put pressure on the A file now, on the C file, and I think is better. And I think that's also the reason why this wasn't played or considered by black. Instead, he chose to play knight c8 after knight e1, knight c8. And the next move by white, rook to c6. It's like a typical move. Occupy the square in the enemy position, block the c7 pawn, and attack the queen at the same time. The queen, of course, has to move. e7. And now we simply continue with our plan. Knight d3. Black does the same. Knight b6. And here we jump straight away. b4. And it's doing multiple things. It's increasing our pressure, our control over the c file, supporting our rook on c6. And it prevents knight to c4. How does it prevent it? Pretty simple. We can simply take the pawn. So for example, knight c4, we can simply take the pawn, for free, and have an attack on the queen again. That's why black is kinda, stuck now. He can't play knight to c4 straight away. And that's why he played rook d8. Again, defending the pawn, trying to go to c4. The next move by white, queen to f5. Attacking the pawn again and again. The knight still can't move. And now black wants to say no more. I have to challenge the rook I have to challenge the occupation of c6. But luckily we have a second pawn, so we can retake any time. And a slightly better defense would be this now, to double up himself on the d file. And then, for example, after knight to f3 to jump to e5, black could simply play f6. But instead, in the game, black took on c6. Of course, we take again with our rook. And now rook d8. After rook d8, can you find the move? We can simply take. And that's where the pressure on the c file, on the open file, finally pays off. A mistake by black, because we will have a fork in the next move. Of course, black has to take. Knight jumps to c6, forking the rook and the queen. Of course, the queen has to move, c7. We take the rook. It's all, forced moves. And after the queen takes back, queen c2. We go back to controlling the c file. And black challenged it by playing queen to c7. We took. Black takes back. And that's basically the end of what I wanted to show you guys. Of course, the game continued. And we will jump to it in a second. But just from the pressure of this on the c file, black now has an isolated pawn on d5. Doubled pawn on the b file. And white will win the game. And if you're interested in seeing that, I will show you the rest of the moves. But that's pretty amazing how small things can add up to like advantages. Of course, you still have to win the game, but that's it. That's how white got an advantage. And feel free to stick around and see the end of the game. The game continued with knight to b1, king to f8, king to f1, king e7, king e2, king d6, getting both kings active, king d3, king c6, knight to c3, knight to e8, some maneuvering, knight to a2 to jump to b4, f6, f3, and here you can see already the isolated pawn against those 5 connected pawns, specifically those 3 aiming at the center in a second. Knight to c7, and of course the b6 pawn highlighted. It's very, very weak. You will see in a second. Check by knight to b4. The king has to move. And now white is advancing in the center. Black takes. White takes, of course. We take with the pawn to maintain the double pawns. They can protect each other, and we have a pass pawn on the d file already. Knight to e6. Our plan is, of course, to advance the d pawn. But before the king moved, the knight moved back. Some maneuvering. Of course, we don't repeat moves. Instead, we play knight to d5. Black has to defend. h4 to prevent any kingside maneuvering or advancing from black. Knight to d8. Knight to f4. King d6. Knight h5 attacking the pawn. Knight e6 defending. King e3. King e7, and now we play d5. We kick out the knight, knight moves to c5, and we can finally take the pawn. King to d6. We occupy e6 and offer a trade. Of course, black declines. King d4, knight to e5, knight to g7, knight c4. Knight f5, we can check before we go and defend our pawn on c3. King d7, and now we advance with our g-pawn. Knight e5, g5, takes, knight f3, and now we don't even care about the g-pawn anymore, because our knight is protecting the h-file, so black will never be able to advance the h-pawn. Black takes, we play e5, h5, e6, king d8, and we take. And in this position, black surrendered. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, learned a thing or two. Please like the video, and I'm happy to see you in the next video.